Welcome to the Love Lab Podcast, a safe and fun place to get real and learn about sex. Whether you're a man or woman, single or couple, this is the show for you. I am your host, Kevin Anthony, and I am here to guide you to go from good to amazing in the bedroom and your relationships. All right, welcome back to the Love Lab Podcast. This is episode 320. And it is titled, How to Have Positive and Effective Sex Communication. So this episode really comes from a listener who asked, please would you consider making an episode on positive and effective sex communication, how to express our needs in a non-hurtful way, and how to manage when the masculine partner isn't into sex or doesn't want to put work into improving it, but you still have a good relationship overall. So that was a request made, and today that's what we're going to talk about. I love, by the way, when listeners or clients or viewers on YouTube, whatever it is, when you actually make requests and ask for content that you want, I love it, absolutely. And I will make note of it. I keep a list of all the requests and I try to get to them when I can. Some of them don't always make up an entire podcast show. So sometimes I'll combine some of them into one episode. That's what I do a lot with listener questions episodes. Sometimes I'll make a YouTube video out of it instead of a podcast. But if it's definitely something that requires more than 10 minutes of explanation, then I will definitely make a podcast. So I really appreciate that. So feel free to send those to me. And just a quick sort of explanation, more than what I just read, about what we're going to talk about today. I want to go into the basics of good communication in a relationship because there's some foundation that needs to be laid first before we even begin to talk about communicating about sex itself. Then, of course, I want to talk about some considerations that are specific to having a conversation around sex. I also want to talk about what to do when your partner isn't into sex, because that was an additional part of the question, and what to do if your partner won't put in the work to improving sex. So those are a couple of things I want to add in at the bottom just to make sure I answered the whole question. But the bulk of this episode is going to be on how to really have great communication around sex. Sex is such an important part of any relationship that we really need to make sure that we're able to clearly and effectively talk about it. And so many people struggle. Really struggle with having really good conversations around sex and sexuality. So we're going to do what we can today to try and improve that. But before we do, short word from my sponsor, Power and Mastery 3.0. Power and Mastery 3.0 is the latest version of the popular men's sexual mastery course. If you're struggling with erectile dysfunction, premature ejaculation, or simply want to increase your skills in the bedroom, then Power and Mastery is for you. Join the exclusive club of men who have taken their sexual performance into their own hands and become sexual masters. Mastering your sexuality is a key component to becoming the man she has always dreamt of and craves. Don't leave your sexual performance up to chance or the throw of the dice. Become a sexual master today by going to powerandmastery.com and joining the exclusive club of men who have taken their destiny into their own hands. That's powerandmastery.com. Hey, I know that right now the economy is tough for a lot of people, and I know a lot of people are struggling, but Power and Mastery is probably the most cost-effective way that you could get help around your sexuality. And, it may not be a priority when things are tough, but I strongly suggest you make it one, because you will find that if you fix the problems in your sex life, you will see other areas of your life improve as well. That is a constant theme on this show, and it is one that you hear from a lot of the guests I have on the show as well. So please go check out powerandmastery.com. Okay, So, before we get into the basics of good communication in a relationship, I have to say, I've been doing a lot of interviews lately. I know sometimes people are like, why do you do so many interviews? Just because I have the opportunity to hear from some of the most amazing experts in all things sex, love, and relationship. And I'm as curious, hopefully, as you are, to learn about what they have to say. I want to bring you as many diverse viewpoints as I possibly can. And I really appreciate that these people are actually asking and wanting to come on this show and share their message. So I have been doing a lot of interviews. When I do interviews, I don't use the sound effects. And recently somebody actually sent me a message and said, hey man, bring back the sound effects. They were such a good part of the show. I know some of you are going, oh God, not the cheesy sound effects again. But yes, there actually was a request to bring back the sound effects. So here they are. I don't know how much opportunity I will have to use them in this episode because, my sound effects for the most part are all just silly, things. And we're going to be getting into some pretty serious stuff today, but we'll see. If there's an opportunity to throw it in throughout the show, I will do that. And thank you for the viewer on YouTube who has said, man, please bring back the sound effects. So there they are. Okay. The basics of good communication in a relationship. That's where we need to start, because there are certain things, it doesn't matter what you're talking about in a relationship. You got to have this foundation. And if you have that, then you can pretty much talk about anything, although certain subjects may have some things that are specific to them. So basics of good communication in a relationship. Number one, you need to create a space in the relationship where anything can be shared safely. Literally anything. And this is so important. In a committed relationship, you and your partner both need to feel safe that you can bring up anything. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter how potentially difficult the subject might be. The problem is if you don't feel safe being able to bring anything up, you're not likely to bring it up. If you don't bring it up, that means you're going to be holding it in, suppressing it, holding it back, and resentment is going to build, and the problems are most likely going to get worse. So it's really important that you create a space in which anything can be shared safely. So we'll talk about this a little bit further on in the list, but just a couple of basics of how do you create a space where anything can be shared. Well, first of all, you just got to state, look, you can come to me about anything, literally anything. I'm not going to get mad at you. I'm not going to overreact. I'm not going to judge you. I'm not going to blame you. I may not even try to, help you or solve your issue unless you want me to, right? So setting those sort of ground rules for communication from the start, it's so important. You need to have that container set so that your partner knows they can bring anything to you. Anything. That's just so important. I can't stress it enough. Okay, number two. All important conversations need to be had face to face. I cannot tell you how frequently I hear from people that I'm coaching that, well, and then he said this, and then he said that, and then blah, 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 blah. And then at some point I'll go, hold on a minute. How was this communicated to you? Well, it was all over text. And I'm just like, oh. Text message is the worst way to communicate. Text messages should literally be for things like, I'm leaving now, I'll see you in 30 minutes. Or, can you pick up some extra whatever at the store, right? Are you free for a video call? Simple, basic stuff. You should never be having a serious or delicate conversation about your relationship or sex via text. I don't know how much stronger I can possibly say that, but it is true. Do not have these conversations via text. They should be face-to-face, in person. If they can't be face-to-face in person, then at least use some sort of video chat app, something where you can actually see the person's face. Use FaceTime, use Signal, use whatever. There's plenty of them out there. But use something where you can actually see the person as well as hear their voice, because there is a lot of non-verbal stuff that is part of communication. Communication isn't just the words that we say, right? It's the expression on our face. It's all kinds of like non-verbal cues, what our eyes are doing, what our lips are doing, what our body position is like. Tons of stuff that you just can't get in something like a text. And it's really important. I'm pretty sure at this point in life, everybody has had an experience where they completely misunderstood something that somebody wrote in a text. This is also why most of your social media erupts into arguments all the time, because people will type something and it was meant to be a joke, and then people don't get that it was a joke because they miss all the nonverbal stuff that goes along with it because it's not there in just text, and then they start arguing. So do your best to have any of these delicate conversations face-to-face, or at least a video chat app. The next one down would be a phone call, and there really isn't anything else after that. There's no other acceptable form of communication for delicate communications around your relationship or sex outside of that. Like emails don't count, texts don't count, just don't do it. All right, number 3, remove all distractions and agree to give each other your full attention. I can't tell you how many times I've seen couples like, they're in the car on the way to an event, and it's like, now's the time to have that discussion about the thing that's bothering me about our relationship. When you're about to go to an event, at least one person in the car is driving, which means they're probably navigating and trying to make sure you arrive safely. Potentially one of them's putting their makeup on. Like, there's just a million distractions going on. It's just a terrible time to have this kind of conversation. It could be that the TV's going in the background, or there's maybe other people around, or whatever it is. You need to make sure that you remove all the distractions, because it's going to be difficult enough to really have this kind of conversation and not misunderstand each other and not make assumptions or whatever. So you really want to make sure that you're removing all distractions and that you're agreeing to give each other your full attention. Put the cell phones down, turn the sound off in the cell phone so you're not hearing the text messages come in and ding or whatever. Turn it upside down so you don't see it light up. Better yet, put it in another room so you're not tempted to pick it up and check it during the conversation. This is really, really important. Okay, number 4. You need to approach every conversation as a team. The problem is that when you want to talk about something really challenging in a relationship, it's usually like, okay, there's something that I am not happy with in the relationship that you probably are okay with, and now we're on opposite sides and we're 2 different teams, right? And that's really not how these things should be approached. You should always approach these conversations as a team. And this is true of anything in a committed relationship. Anything that you're going to be doing in life, you should be approaching as a team. And, as a team, it means that this isn't me against you. This isn't me trying to get what I want from you or me trying to force you to be a certain way. This is us talking about a dynamic or a need in a relationship and how the 2 of us can work together to create the desired outcome. That's really what it's about. And if you can't see it from that point of view, honestly, you need to figure out a way to see it from that point of view before you have this conversation. So let's just say I'm the man and I have one of the biggest complaints of all men, and that is, she never wants to have sex. I always have to initiate, and we don't have enough sex, right? So we want to have that conversation. Well, rather going into it from the point of view of, I'm the one not getting enough sex, and we need to figure out how to get her to have more sex. It's like, no, we need to sit down and figure out, okay, in our relationship, I'm not feeling fulfilled sexually. So how can we work together for me to have my needs met. And honestly, the reality is, guys, in the overwhelming majority of cases, if she's not giving you enough sex and you're not feeling fulfilled, she's probably not feeling fulfilled in her sexual relationship either. It's just that she's not willing to have bad sex or disconnected sex or whatever it is to fulfill her need. Like, she's willing to withhold sex in order to wait for the kind of sex that she really wants and needs. Whereas you're like, just give me sex anyway, even if it's not that great, right? The point really is that she's probably not fulfilled either. So this is an opportunity for the two of you to work together to figure out how can we both be fulfilled in our sex lives. Because honestly, if she was getting the kind of sex that she really wanted and she was feeling fulfilled, she would most likely want more of it, which means you'd get more sex, which means you would not be feeling like you're not getting enough sex, right? So please approach these conversations as a team. And that's true of anything that's going on in your relationship, not just sex. So you really want to look at it from, hey, we're a team. We're here to support each other. We've made that commitment. That's why we choose to be together. How can we do that together? Okay, number 5, you need to learn how to express your needs without blaming the other person. So remember what I said back in number 1, creating a space in the relationship where anything can be shared. This is one of those things. You need to make sure that the conversation doesn't come across as blaming. So if we bring it back to the example I just used, where the guy is complaining that he's not getting enough sex, it's like, I'm not getting enough sex because you never want to have sex, and because you always have a headache, and because you've always got an excuse, right? That's blame. As opposed to saying, hey, sex is really important to me, and it's a way that I feel connected to you. It's a way that I bond with you. It's a way that I move the stress of my job, is by being sexually active. And I'm wondering how we can potentially improve our sex life, right? So, you got to approach it from that way of like, here's a need I have, and I want to work together with you to figure out how I can get my need met, as opposed to my needs not being met and it's all your fault, right? That's what you don't want to do. So figure out how to express your needs without blaming. Usually, a need will be like, well, I don't get enough sex. Like, let's say that's a man. Let's go on the other side for a woman. Well, the need might be, you never satisfy me. I don't want sex because you never satisfy me, right? And you could flip that around and say, well, I haven't been that into sex because the sex we've been having doesn't really work for me, and I would love for us to work together and figure out a way for it to work for me. Because the reality is this, it might be that, you aren't actually performing well in sex, and therefore her needs aren't met. But it might be that the things that you've always done in sex that worked for other partners simply don't work for this partner, right? So rather than immediately assuming that everything you're doing is wrong and she thinks you're terrible at sex, why don't you look at it from the point of view of, oh, something something in our dynamic isn't working for her, right? And then figure out how you can shift that dynamic so that it does work. Number 6, you need to learn how to communicate with compassion. One of the ways that you can learn how to communicate with compassion is to learn nonviolent communication. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can see I am holding up the book, Nonviolent Communication, A Language of Life by Marshall B. Rosenberg, PhD. This is a fantastic book, and I highly recommend everybody read it. It actually says in the top of the book, this is one of the most useful books you'll ever read. I actually agree with that. Those subtitles can be a bit hyperbolic at times, but the reality is if you haven't learned this, it's like an essential part of being human and learning how to communicate. Now, what I find interesting and funny about this book is I have recommended this book many, many times on this show and in YouTube videos. And inevitably, some chucklehead comments about the fact that nonviolent communication is for pussies and what a bunch of crap and you just need to do this and do that. I can absolutely tell you that anybody that says that has never read this book. This book is fantastic. It's not about being a doormat in any way, shape, or form. It's really got some fantastic stuff. And, again, it gives you ideas on how to communicate. It doesn't mean you have to follow everything. But, it talks about communication that blocks compassion, observing without evaluating, identifying and expressing feelings, taking responsibility for your feelings, requesting what you want, receiving, empathy, expressing anger. So it's going to teach you how to express anger, protective force versus protective use of force. So there's protective force versus punitive force. So there's so much good stuff in here. It's like a real foundation for learning how to communicate. Don't listen to any of the negative crap that people talk about. Even if you don't want to use the full nonviolent communication process, I guarantee you that you will learn something in that book that will improve the quality of your day-to-day communication. So that's number 6. Learn how to communicate with compassion. Super important, and a great place to start is with that book right there. Okay, number 7. You may need to implement communication strategies. This is really, really important. There are a lot of communication strategies out there. I'm going to give you a couple. But what are communication strategies? They are tools or strategies that you can implement when communicating to improve the quality of the communication between the two of you. I'll give you some examples. Number 1, slow down. A lot of people tend to talk very fast and deliver a lot of content all at once. Just slow down. This isn't a race. There isn't a need to get everything out. If you've agreed to an emotionally mature conversation, and your partner is relatively emotionally mature, you don't have to try to get everything you want to say out first before they jump in, because they will not interrupt you until you give them space to, right? So until you've said what you need to say, and then you ask for feedback. So just slow down. Again, it's not a race. If you can slow down and deliver the message that you want to deliver more slowly, it will be much easier for the person to hear it and to actually absorb the facts and the requests made within that. Number 2, chunk it down. This is another really important one. As I just talked about, not only do so many people go really fast, but they deliver a lot of information all at once. We call it fire hosing. You see this all the time. It's just like, okay, we need to talk. All right, go ahead. And then they just jump a ton of stuff. It's like someone just put the fire hose on you and just drenched you, and you don't even know where to start when it comes your turn to talk. So another strategy might be chunk it down. Some people have the ability to take all of that in and process it quickly and then respond. But many people do not. It's overwhelmed. It overwhelms their system, and it literally shuts them down. They can't communicate after that. So if you chunk it down and give them little bits at a time and give them an opportunity to process that and respond, you are likely to get a much, much better response from them. A third strategy is to repeat back. Man, I've used this one in the past with people I've had a difficult time communicating with, and I've expressed what I wanted to express, and then I'd say, please repeat back to me what I just said. And what comes back sometimes is, not only just wrong, but I've had things repeat back that were the exact opposite of what I just said. Just to make a really simple example, if I said something was black and then I said, okay, please repeat back to me, and they'll say, well, you said that thing was white. And I'm like, how? Where? Why? How did that happen? Right? So the idea of asking somebody to repeat something back allows you to hear if whether or not the words you used were effective. As it was transmitted across the medium, it was, the integrity of what you said was maintained, and when it was received on the other end, it was received correctly. And if not, so if that happens and they repeat back to you and it's something other than what you said, don't get mad at them. Just simply say, okay, that's actually not what I was trying to get across. Let me try again. Right? And then you try it again, ask for them to repeat back until they actually repeat back to you the thing that you actually intended to say. Now, I've used this strategy in the past, and I did have one person say, like, I'm not an idiot, I understood you. And it's like, we're not trying to say that somehow you're unintelligent or not capable in any way. It's just a lot can happen from when the words leave until they make it to their destination and get processed. So, you might want to let that person know it's not because I think that somehow you're not smart enough or, capable. I just want to make sure that what you are hearing is what I am actually saying. All right, another strategy is to ask for feedback. So if you slow down, you break it down into chunks, right? You can ask them to repeat it back to make sure they got it. Okay, great. And then ask them for feedback. Let them address things one at a time rather than trying to remember everything and address it all at once. So those are some strategies that you can implement to improve communication. And do not be afraid to use strategies. They are here to make things better. It's amazing to me how people really take communication for granted. In other words, like, you learned how to talk when you were really young and you think you've mastered it now. And it's like, I don't need help. I don't need strategies, whatever. Like, I know how to talk and communicate. But the reality is that's probably not true. You probably didn't learn healthy and effective ways to communicate. And even if you did, every person you communicate with is different and they might require different strategies to really hear and understand you. So do not be afraid to use strategies. Okay, number 8, be as clear as you can. This is really important. Even myself, I have a tendency, if I wasn't prepared for a conversation, to sort of be thinking out loud and to be, using a lot of words to sort of talk out loud what it is I want to say. I mean, if you have to do that, you have to do that. However, it's best if you can really take a little bit of time, maybe even just pause for a moment, get your thoughts clear in your head first, and then try to deliver what you want to say as clearly as you can. The less words you use, the easier it is for the person on the other end to hear you, to understand you. And that's what you really want. I mean, you're saying these things because you want to be heard and understood. So why not make it as easy for the other person as possible to hear you and understand you? Number 9, if you need to, prepare ahead of time. This is what I was just talking about too. Like, if you agree and you say, hey, I'd really love for us to have a conversation, tonight or tomorrow, about our sex life and what we might be able to do, like how it's going for us and what we might be able to do to make it more fun or to make it better. Don't just go, oh yeah, sure, we'll talk about that. And then when the time comes, it's like, I hadn't really thought about that, right? You don't want to be in that position. What you really want to do is, like, if you have time, if you've scheduled this talk ahead of time, give yourself 5 or 10 minutes at least to sit down and collect your thoughts. Like, if I'm going to have a conversation about our sex life, what are the things that I actually want to talk about? How do I actually feel about it? Maybe I haven't actually stopped to think about, how that's going, Maybe you haven't thought about it in a long time, right? So if you have the opportunity, definitely take some time to prepare. Number 10, be mindful of your tone. I'm sure you've heard this many times before. It's not always or necessarily what you say, but how you say it. You can say the right words, but if you say it with some sort of snarky tone, they're not going to be taken the way you wanted them to be taken. So that is important. Always be mindful of your tone. We're all guilty of it at times. I've absolutely been guilty of that one myself. So yeah, it's something that you should pay attention to. Number 11, listen to understand and not respond. This is a huge one. So many people, they're just basically waiting for you to slow down and finish so that they can jump in with their point of view. But while they're impatiently waiting, they're not hearing a damn word that you said. So it's really important to make sure that you're actually listening to the words so that you can understand where this person is coming from. If you feel really passionately about something that you want to share, it will still be there later on. So don't worry about it, or write it down if you're afraid you're going to forget about it. But whatever you can do to let go of that so that you can actually listen to understand, that is really important. And if you don't really comprehend what that really means, listen to understand and not to respond, please take some time to contemplate that and think about past conversations you've had where you may have been literally listening or pseudo-listening to respond. This is a really huge piece when it comes to communication. So I really hope that if you're, those of you who are listening, that you really understand that. Number 12, develop your emotional intelligence. This is really important. It's hard. It's really hard to have a difficult conversation about anything, especially sex, when the parties involved haven't mastered at least a basic level of emotional intelligence. So what does that mean? Well, it means, not reacting immediately. It means being able to employ strategies. It means awareness around how you tend to respond, right? And being like, oh, that's something that normally triggers me. Okay, I need to calm down. I need to hold on to that for a moment. Don't just blurt out my response. There's lots of things that emotional intelligence means. In fact, we did an entire episode here. You can just search the term emotional intelligence. Had a great guest on talking about that. But it's definitely something that you need to develop. It will make all of your relationships better, not just the difficult conversations. Like every part of your relationship will get better once you have mastered a certain amount of emotional intelligence. And for me and a partner, a high level of emotional intelligence is an absolute must. I would not get involved in a relationship with anybody that didn't have a high level of emotional intelligence. Now, it's not always easy to tell what somebody's level of emotional intelligence is right from the start, but you should be looking for the signs. Like, how do they handle challenging situations? How do they show up in difficult conversations, right? How do they handle their emotions? There are signs that you can look for, and I strongly suggest that you do. Okay. Number 13, take responsibility for your part. Unfortunately, in these conversations, a lot of the time, it's all about blame, and nobody takes the time to go, yeah, you're right, I effed that up. I could do better on that part. I mean, sometimes you just got to do it. It hurts. It's confronting to your ego. I get it. None of us want to admit it, but it's really important. Even if you take responsibility for a small thing, it really lets the other person know that, oh, okay, they get at least part of it, right? It's amazing how a difficult conversation can really shift when somebody says, you're right, I could have done better on that one. It could be literally as simple as that. And number 14, play the appreciation game. Why did I tack that on here? Because it doesn't seem to really be a communication strategy. But if you've listened to this show for any amount of time, you know that Celine and I were big proponents of something we call the appreciation game. This one actually came from Celine. She brought it into my world and I loved it, and I've been teaching it ever since because I think it's so great. And it's really simple. It's just that every day you make it a point to tell your partner 3 things that you love or appreciate about them. The reason why that is tacked on at the end of this list of basic communication strategies is because if you are letting your partner know how much you love and appreciate them on a regular basis, when it does come time to share something challenging, they will be much more open to it. They will realize that, this must actually be important, and that you're not just bitching and moaning and complaining because that's who you are, somebody who bitches and moans and complains, and you're never happy and you're never satisfied and blah, blah, blah. If you are genuinely appreciating them on a regular basis, when something difficult comes up, they'll go, oh, okay, this must be important. So it's a way to nurture the relationship such that when difficult things do arise, they are more easy to handle. So there you go. Those are some basics of good communication in a relationship. If you could master those things, you will be doing better than probably 98% of the people out there communicating in a relationship. And look, none of us are perfect. We all make mistakes. Even if we're teaching this stuff, it doesn't mean we get it all right all the time. But do your best. That's really all you can do. And when you see that you are showing up in a conversation in a certain way where maybe you haven't done some of these things, don't beat yourself up for it. Just be aware of it and go, okay, I need to do better next time. So, okay. From there, we next need to move on to some things that are more specific to sexual conversations. However, before we do that, we need to take a short break for my second sponsor.
Yeah, baby!
Oh, yes, I know you were excited about that. I just threw that in there because of the request for sound effects, and I was like, wow, I'm halfway through the show, and I really haven't had an opportunity to use them. Okay. Are you a couple? Are your relationship and sex life where you want them to be? Are there changes you would like to make but just don't know how? Maybe you think there is nothing that can be done. If you're not 100% happy with where your relationship or sex life is, then get help today and change your life. Go to kevinandceline.com/sex-coaching-couples and schedule a strategy call with me today so we can map out a strategy to get you where you want to be so you can have it all your way. Go to kevinandceline.com/sex-coaching-couples and book your strategy call today. Don't worry about the long link. It's in the description. Just click on it. If you're watching a clip of this show or anything on social media, just go to link in bio, and from there you'll figure out how to get there as well. But this is my couples coaching program. I love working with couples. I get the opportunity to work with both halves of the couple, which means we can make a lot of progress. So yeah, if you're a couple and you realize you're not where you want to be and you need some help, that's the place to go. kevinandceline.com/sex-coaching-couples. Okay, so next, let's talk about some additional considerations when you are talking about sex specifically. Number 1, no sexual need or desire is wrong. So this is really important because a lot of times people are afraid to talk about something they need or desire in their sex life because they are afraid that their partner is going to judge them. So, that's wrong, or that's disgusting, or that's gross, or why would you want that? If you're going to have emotionally intelligent and mature conversations around sex, you need to assure each other that they can literally say anything. Now, if the person shares something with you that you do find really kind of gross, don't have a reaction like, oh my God, oh, you're a terrible person. Oh, what is wrong with you? Just be like, okay, I hear that. That is not something that I'm into. It's not something I would actually even be willing to do, if it's that, out of your comfort zone. But let's explore what need it is that you are trying to meet with that particular sex act. Maybe there's a way we can meet it differently. And if not, maybe there's another strategy that we can get that need met. But it's really important that you create that. So, we talked in the basics of good communication about creating a space in which you can share anything safely. This is sort of an addition to that. Letting them know that no need or desire is wrong. You're not going to judge them for what they want or need when it comes to sex. Number 2, the more you talk about sex, the easier it is. When Celine was alive, it didn't matter where we went, dinner parties, events, whatever. I mean, this is what we do for a living, right? This conversation would always come around to sex. Always, always, always. People would joke about it. It's like, oh, Kevin and Celine are here. You know what we're going to end up talking about. And so the point is that we talked about sex all the time. And so for us, it was easy and normal for us to talk about sex. However, for many people, they really just don't talk about sex. It makes them uncomfortable. It's not something that they've really done much in their life. And so that makes having conversations about sex when you need to have them that much more challenging. So one of the things I suggest is to talk about sex regularly. Even if you don't need to have any sort of challenging conversation about sex, just talk about sex in general. In fact, if you have a lot of conversations about sex, about what's going right and what you like, then when you tell your partner, hey, I'd like to have a conversation about our sex life, they're not immediately going to freak out going, oh my God, what's wrong now? Right? Because they're used to talking about sex and the majority of the time it's positive. So the more you talk about sex, the easier it is. Number 3, you're asking for something sexually doesn't mean the other person is bad at it. This is important to get across that, just because I might need a certain thing in bed doesn't necessarily mean that you're instantly bad at sex. And that's unfortunately the way a lot of people take it. It's like, if it's not working for you, then you're telling me I'm no good at it. No, it might just be that what you're doing doesn't work for this particular partner or in that particular moment. Maybe it works most of the time, but it's not working in that moment or in that phase of your life, right? If you've been together for a long time, maybe that worked when you were in your 20s and 30s. And now maybe that you're in your 40s and 50s, it doesn't work anymore. So just because you're asking for something doesn't mean that the other person is necessarily bad. And if the person is asking you, don't automatically make that assumption that they must think I'm bad at sex in some way. Number 4, always phrase things from the point of view of how sex could be even better. This is about kind of putting a positive spin on something rather than a negative spin. So rather than saying, you never last long enough, and that's why I can never have an orgasm. Maybe you kind of flip that around and say, I've noticed that for me, it takes me a good, 20 or 30 minutes generally before I can achieve orgasm. So I'm wondering, how can we have sex long enough that I can really get there? Like what can we do to get me there, right? So that's shifting away from the blaming, the you don't last long enough, you're not good enough, to here's what I need and how can we work together to make that happen? So yeah, again, phrasing things from the positive will get you much better results in this situation than in the complaining side. Number 5, Try to make it about experimenting and having fun rather than trying to fix something broken. And this is something I often encourage couples to do, which is like, rather than saying, we need to talk, this isn't working for me. Even if that's the case, why not approach it from the point of view of, hey, sex is important to me. It's a way that I feel connected to you. It's a way that I bond with you. It's a way that, share the feelings behind it. And I would love to find ways that we could do that better than we have been doing it. Rather than this thing is completely broken and it's not working at all, right? You go, okay, I really want to make it better. Where could we possibly take this? What new levels of ecstasy could we possibly create? What new levels of intimacy and depth and bonding could we possibly create? That's a completely different way of phrasing it. And that will make your partner much more open to having this conversation than if they feel like they're being told they're no good at it and everything's broken and they've got all this work to do to try to fix something. Number 6, don't make comparisons. This is deadly. Well, in my last relationship, so-and-so was able to do this. Just don't go there. Just don't go there. Don't ever go into the comparisons. When it comes to sex, this can be extremely hurtful and challenging to your partner. Again, it gets to the I'm not good enough, I don't know what I'm doing, or everything I do is wrong. Just don't go there. That may be true. It may be 100% true. Just don't go there. Just don't say it. There's no point in saying that. It's not going to help anything at all. Just tell them what it is that you like and what it is that you need, and then work together to create solutions to figure out how you can get there. Number 7, also let your partner know about the things that are good, that are working, and that you like and appreciate. So, when it comes to talking about sex, again, don't just talk about sex when something's not working or when it's bad. Talk about sex frequently and talk about the things that you really love. Talk about the things that are working. You can always find something that is working for you. Well, almost always find something. And share them on a regular basis. That will get you more used to talking about sex, and that will also let the person know that there are things that you do love, enjoy, and value, and it's not all just complaints. Nobody wants to hear just complaints. So there you go. Those are some additional considerations to add to your communication when it comes to talking about sex. Woo! All right. We covered quite a bit there. We are getting down towards the end of the show. I just want to cover a couple of quick last things that were part of the original question from the listener, which is what to do when your partner isn't into sex. Number 1, find out what's in the way. If somebody isn't into sex, there's something that is in the way. It could be stress. It could be they're not getting the kind of sex they want. It could be trauma. It could be past abuse. It could be a lot of different things. You need to find out what's underneath it. If you don't solve the underlying cause, then nothing else you do is really going to work. In other words, let's say it's based on trauma. They have some sort of trauma response from a past relationship or sexual abuse or anything like that. If you don't solve that, trying strategies to get them to want more sex, it's just not going to work. It's just not going to work because it's just going to keep triggering that underlying trauma. So when your partner isn't into sex, you need to figure out what is in the way. There is something there that is preventing them from enjoying a normal, happy, healthy sex life, which most people want to. I mean, that thing could be hormones are out of balance due to, menopause or andropause or whatever. Just find out what that thing is. It could literally be as simple as, getting on some bioidentical hormone treatment, and then suddenly your sex drive returns again. So find out what's in the way. Number 2, have an open and honest communication. This is everything that we just talked about so far. You just got to talk about it. So when your partner isn't that into sex, you gotta talk about it and follow all of the rules that I just spent 45 minutes plus talking about. Have open and honest communication. Number 3, negotiate ways that you can both get your needs met. Now, that might mean you're meeting each other's needs. That might mean you find more creative ways that are outside the box to get your needs met. Remember, part of the premise of this question was you have a great relationship in every other way except the sex part. So you most likely do not want to abandon this relationship just because a particular sexual need of yours isn't being met. So then you want to look at it from the point of view of how can we both get our needs met and still keep the relationship working, but without maybe forcing you to try to meet a need that you don't actually want to meet. So that sometimes requires some creative out-of-the-box thinking. But it's perfectly acceptable. It's amazing to me how many times I see people say, well, I don't really have interest in sex anymore, and so therefore you, my partner, will just never have sex again for the rest of your life, however long that is, 10, 20, 30 years, right? That's just honestly not fair, and it's selfish. If you don't have a desire to have sex anymore, but your partner does, but you love each other, maybe you have kids together, business together, you love everything else about the relationship, you need to be willing to figure out how your partner can get their needs met. All right, and then lastly, what if your partner won't put the work into improving? A couple of quick tips there. Number 1, you need to express why it's important to you. How does it make you feel? So a lot of times, this can go both ways for sure. There are plenty of women who aren't interested either. But a lot of times you hear this complaint in regards to men. Like, he just does the same old thing all the time and he's not interested in learning anything new or trying to figure out, what it is I actually need. So express why it's important. This is important to me because when we make love consistently, and I, have at least occasional orgasm or whatever it is, it makes me feel like this. I feel closer to you. I feel more connected to you. I feel more love for you. There's just so many potential benefits to that. Express those benefits. That's really the point. Because, a lot of times as men, we're just kind of like, we go on autopilot. I mean, not me, but in general, a lot of men do. They just go on autopilot and they don't even realize it's a problem until you voice it and go, oh, I didn't even realize that was so important to you. I just thought it was kind of like whatever, So it's really important to express that and let your partner know why it's so important to you. What is the need underneath the thing that you're requesting? Number 2, again, find out what's in the way. If they're not interested in improving, maybe it's because they just think, I've always been bad, I'll always be bad, there's nothing I can do about it, or you don't care anyway, so why should I bother, or whatever it is. There's got to be something underneath it. Maybe it's just like they're like, I've tried everything and I can't fix it, so I just gave up. Like, who knows? But figure out what is in the way and preventing them from potentially improving. Anybody can improve. Anybody can improve. So it's possible. It's just that sometimes people don't realize that. Number 3, ask for a trial period. And what I mean by that is, you can say, hey, why don't we just try this for a month, 2 weeks, whatever it is, depends how frequently you have sex. And let's see how it goes. Let's see if it actually makes a difference or not. So, because a lot of times, if you're asking a partner to do something new or different, to expand, maybe to learn something new, there can be hesitation for many reasons. One of which is, it's not going to help anyway, or, well, that sounds like a lot of work, or I don't really get what the benefit would be. It doesn't really make sense to me. For any of those, you can say, well, let's just try it. Let's just try it for a month, see what happens. If we like it, we can continue. If we don't, we won't, right? And number 4, of course, get help. Get help. If you're struggling with any of this communication stuff, just get help. There's no need to struggle with this. There's no need to damage your relationship because you were afraid to, or for whatever reason, you just didn't get the help that you needed. Same thing if your partner isn't into sex, get some help. See if they'll at least agree to talk to somebody and figure it out. There are no guarantees. At the end of the day, this person might say, there's nothing we can do. And at the same time, you might discover something really important that significantly improves your relationship. And same thing if they aren't really into improving. Just if you're seeing you're not making progress and you're doing everything you can do, then definitely get the help that you need. Whew! All right. Well, there you go, everybody. That is how to have positive and effective sex communication, with a few bonus questions answered at the end. I really hope that you found that valuable. I hope that this makes it easier for you to have delicate conversations about sex. And I hope also that it maybe makes conversations around sex at least a little bit less delicate and easier for you to have. So if you have any questions, as always, please let me know. You can write it in the comments. You can send me an email. I'm happy to answer your questions. I'd love to hear success stories too. If you've used any of this and you've had success in your relationship, please share your success stories with me. I would love to share those with the audience also. Anonymously, of course, if that's what you require. But yeah, please let me know. All right, everybody, that's all the time I have for this episode, and I will see you next week. I hope you liked this episode of the Love Lab podcast. If you enjoyed this show, subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with your friends. And for more free exclusive content, join me in the Passion Vault at kevinandceline.com/vault. That's kevinandceline.com/vault. Thanks for listening, and remember, as Celine used to say, you're amazing.